All right, for this video, we're going to focus on Gerald Ford and his presidency. We're also going to be focusing on some of the cultural things during the time as well. So, with Gerald Ford is the only person to become president without winning any type of an election. Presidents always have to win some kind of election, whether they're the president or the VP. But this was a special circumstance because Spiro Agnew, the VP for Nixon, they had to get rid of him, and then Nixon resigned after picking Ford to become his VP. So a lot of people felt like this was some kind of a secret deal. The deal being that I'll make you vice president, but then once I resign, you have to give me that presidential pardon. And that's really going to backfire against him in the election of 1976. People are going out there, they're voting, and they're saying, look, this guy is part of the problem. We got to get him out of here. We don't want any type of deal makers in office. And then on top of that, he could not deal with the inflation of the time. He made a promise. We are going to whip inflation. Matter of fact, inflation whipped their tails, or the Americans' tails, and everybody else's, because the crisis of the time of the stagflation and everything else just got worse underneath Gerald Ford. It was not looking good for America at that point in time. And the recession was growing and growing, and people were starting to say, let's go with a different person. Now, he did agree with Kissinger's idea of detente, and he looked to further better relationships between the United States and the USSR and other communist nations. So he's going to come up with the Helsinki Accords. And that goal was to improve those relations between Western nations, not just us, but countries in Western parts of England or countries that had become what the term was westernized or modern. The goal was just to improve those relations. Now, he will go ahead and sign SALT II. This SALT treaty is nothing more than an expansion on the first SALT treaty, and that was the limitation of nuclear weapons and how they were going to test them, where they were going to test them. And the goal was to have less nukes in case the world were to break out in this nuclear holocaust. Um, it was still going to end the world no matter what, but they didn't want to really flex their muscles in front of each other anymore. And as you can see in this video, I'm going to show you here real quick. You can see all these weapons going off, and we can go ahead and fast forward even more. The world was exploding way too many weapons. Every one of these dots goes off, we're seeing a bomb go off. And that was not a good sign for the entire world. And the SALT treaties help and make sure that, we're not doing this anymore. This is in the year 1968. We can go ahead and speed up the video, and these numbers are going to shoot up. By 1977, the United States has already detonated over 800 bombs. Kind of ridiculous. And then the last thing in which Ford really had to deal with in Vietnam was the downfall of South Vietnam. In 1975, North Vietnamese rolled into South Vietnamese territory, and Ford decides that he's not going to do anything about it. We've already kind of covered that Ford at this point in time, and the American people were tired of Vietnam. We already spent $118 billion in it, and 56,000 American deaths had occurred, along with 300,000 being wounded. It was an abandoned cause. We weren't going to deal with it anymore. Now, Ford had to deal with some other issues in Southeast Asia. We did not intervene with the Khmer Rouge incident, in which they killed approximately 1.5 million to 2 million people there in Cambodia. These were Cambodian people instilling communism and trying to make everybody equal. If they thought you were a little bit different, they killed you for that reason. And that reason can be, hey, you were trying to go to school, whatever the case may be. They wanted to really make the country a group of poor farmers. These guys have gotten away with all their crimes, all their genocide. Nothing's happened to them. And there in Cambodia today, they still hold like rituals and, well, I wouldn't say rituals, but ceremonies for the fallen people who died in this genocide. And then we had the Mayor Goose incident, where the Khmer Rouge pretty much went in there and seized an American merchant ship. Now, Ford did act on this one. He had no choice but to. And he's going to send in some Marines to go ahead and get the crew out. All the crew does escape. I believe two people or two Marines were killed in the process. And then we have the term boat people. This term applies to the people of South Vietnam that want to get out of there. They do not like the incoming government, the way of life, the communistic type of style. So they get out of Vietnam, and a lot of them will settle in the United States. A good friend of mine his parents are one of these quote term boat people. Now let's go ahead and shift the focus towards race at this point in time in the 1970s. We're going to have a movement known as the white flight movement. A lot of Americans that are white are gaining enough money to get out of the inner city, and so they are moving to the suburbs. And this is pretty much creating a divide between whites and blacks, where all the blacks have to live in the inner cities because they can't afford to get out. And in some places in the suburbs, they wouldn't even let African Americans or other minorities purchase property still at this point in time. And then we've got a very controversial court case known as Regents of University of California versus Bake. And the court case stated that you could not give special treatment based solely on race. However, though, race can be one of the several factors in admitting students. This is known as affirmative action. Now, people who oppose affirmative action are saying that you are going to allow not the best person to get into this school, but you're going to allow, a certain percentage of minorities compared to just white people. And then the other argument or the counter argument is that there are certain intangibles that you cannot measure based on, what a student has done in the past. Key one being potential. Okay, you got a white student who went to a superior school. He gets a 1300 on the SAT. All right. And then on the other hand, we got a black student who went to a school that's nowhere near distinguished and they make a 1280. Well, of course, the white kid who had a superior education should make better. But those 20 points, if that black kid had been in the superior school, pretty sure his potential would have been a lot higher. And so that's where affirmative action really kicks in. As you can see right here, this is uplifting the black people because in some places, or no, a lot of places, they have been at some kind of a disadvantage, whether it be schooling, social economics. And to completely ignore the white racial advantage is kind of ignorance, especially at that point in time in history. Today, the scales are starting to get kind of equal, but we're still working on it. And that's the key thing that we should continue to strive for. So let's go ahead and talk about the me generation. The me generation is still these baby boomers. And we're going to see the baby boomers be all about me. Now, they're not as much about me as the millennials. Millennials are who are in my age group. I'm kind of like in the gap between them and the Gen Xers. But the millennials are called the me group. And then I heard the other day the generation after that being the millennials is the meme group because that's all they do is sit there and scroll and look for different memes that they can laugh at 3 o'clock in the morning. Who knows? Now, a couple of interesting facts about the me generation. One, divorce rate was nearly double compared to what their parents had gone through. And there are twice as many kids being born out of wedlock. So marriage is just kind of a luxury at that point in time. They are also indulging in self-indulgent type of trends like working out, body lifting, going running, staying in shape. It's about how good you look. Today, it's kind of like how many likes do you get, or retweets, or followers on TikTok, or whatever the case may be. And this me generation idea grew at a pretty quick rate. You can see in the New York Marathon, only 100 people participated in the 1970 race. But by 1980, 14,000 people are participating in it. Today, I'm not sure what the number is. I'm pretty sure it's a lot more than that. We have other marathons, probably the most famous one being the Boston Marathon. And we can also see TV is changing. We're starting to see something for a little bit of everybody, like MASH with the war. That's for the older generation, or the veterans, and everybody else who, kind of relates to that. And then we got Chico and the Man and Sanford and Son. Sanford and Son is a great show, probably the only one out of the air that I think I've actually watched and liked. And these were aired for particular minorities, but other people watched them as well. And then we've got the show All in the Family, who pretty much are, geared to trying to reach that white culture of the 1970s. And then we got 60 Minutes started to come around. It's still around today. You watch it usually on Sunday, I believe. But the main thing is all this is starting to influence culture in a lot of different ways. All right, that's it for today. Hope you guys are doing well still. We only have about a week and a couple of days, which is a good thing. And anything, get up with me. Take care. Enjoy your break. It's been a long break, it seems, even though we've been kind of stressed out at times. But love you all. Hopefully, I'll get to see you in August. Take care.